Oh, we have a sample today. It's a little bit lighter than I thought it would be, actually. Released in the name of late master distiller Parker Beam, today we have the 2023 release of Parker's Heritage from Heaven Hill. Now, historically, the barrel selected from Parker's Heritage includes bourbon, rye, and also even wheat whiskeys, among others. Now, the 17th edition of the Parker's Heritage Collection 2023 consists of a 10-year-old Kentucky straight rye whiskey at barrel proof. Let's try it. It's a sample Saturday on the Mash and Drum. What's up, folks? I'm Jason C from the Mash and Drum, and welcome back to the show. Like, subscribe, help grow the channel for 2023. Thank you so much for the support. So as I mentioned, the 2023 edition of Parker's Heritage Collection is the 17th release. Now, the release is comprised of 142 barrels, and it's the highest age rye in Heaven Hill's portfolio. Now, this is the second time a rye has been released, with the first being the 2019 Heavy Char Straight Rye. Now, according to the press release, the 17th edition is comprised of 10-year-old rye whiskey that was barreled in August, October, or December of 2012. The barrels were aged on the first floors of Rickhouse's H1 and H2, the fifth floor of Rickhouse FF, the third and seventh floors of Rickhouse BB, and the second floor of Rickhouse DD. As always, Heaven Hill will contribute a portion of the proceeds from each bottle sold to the ALS Association in honor of the late Heaven Hill master distiller, Parker Beam. Honestly, I've always loved that about Parker's Heritage and, contributing to ALS with every bottle sale. I really honestly think every special release from every distiller should have a charitable component. I mean, it's a no-brainer. If you ask us to pay $250 to $500 for a limited release, I mean, use some of that money to help people. I'm just saying, there are so many generous whiskey groups that I know of. I know how generous the whiskey community is. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer for distillers to just do it. I mean, just my 2 cents. And there may be a lot of charity organizations that distilleries do contribute to, but man, I feel like if you link it to a bottle, I don't know, just my 2 cents.
Do it. Do it.
All right, so the rest of the details: Parker's Heritage 10-year barrel proof straight rye is bottled at 128.8 proof with a mash bill of 51% rye, 35% corn, and 14% malted barley. Price at $185. I want to thank my buddy Mark for sending this along so I could give it a try. Gotten so many, requests to review this one, but I just haven't been able to get a bottle at a price I want to pay for it. So here we go. Wow, the nose is cinnamon raisin bread all day long. Cinnamon raisin bread. And I don't know if it's really as much of a dark fruit note coming out to me that's very raisiny, but man, the cinnamon and rye spice is just exploding out of this glass. Definitely some good aged oak here too. Even at 10 years, which doesn't seem like a long age, but typically 10 years is pretty old for a rye whiskey. I mean, you gotta think they release ryes that are 2 and 3 years old in some areas, which actually tastes pretty good. Rye just does better at a younger age than bourbon does. Man, allspice, clove. This is very baking spice heavy. Maybe a little sweet tobacco here too. All right, let's give it a try, guys. Cheers. I love the front of the palate on this. Not even mid to back, the front. I always talk about that Pop Rocks effect. You kind of leave it on the front of your tongue and you kind of feel the, everything kind of tingle a little bit. That's how you know you're gonna get a really good, at least that's my indicator as how I'm gonna get like a really good just flavor explosion on the palate, man. That tingliness in the front kind of leads to the mid palate. Again, very baking spice heavy, a lot of sweet oak, a little bit of a drying oak type aspect too on the back end of this as well. But from those 10-year-old age rye barrels. But then, man, all in between. I think you get a lot of those baking spices I mentioned. There's a hint of like a chocolate cherry cordial thing going on in the mid palate as well. But a ton of rye spice, which is what I love. Yeah, this just takes everything I love about Pikesville and just, turns it up. It's like this spicy Mexican chocolate. You can even convince me there's a little bit of like a cayenne pepper type thing going on in here. Or like a red pepper. There's definitely, a good amount of pepper here that kind of dances in between those sweet flavors. I mean, I feel like this is exactly what I would expect from a barrel proof rye from Heaven Hill. yeah, as you keep drinking this, it stays pretty consistent. The rye spice maintains. The sweetness levels, all in between, are still there. Again, a little bit of that dry oak finish, a little bit of chocolate, a little cherry. Yeah, I just think it does everything right. It hits all the notes I wanted here. Like I said, it took everything that you love about Pikesville, just kind of amped it up a bit. Not as much citrus as I usually find in ryes. This kind of goes into a little bit of a darker profile, which I love. So let's do a quick final breakdown on this one. All right, final breakdown on the Parker's Heritage 2023 10-year barrel proof rye. We have a price of $185 for MSRP. Secondary market value, I've seen these as high as $600, $400 to $600 in most places. I mean, I think that's just what you normally get for Parker's Heritage, the limited release aspect of it, and also the name recognition that it has. Obviously, the availability is going to be limited, but as far as value, I'm going to say it's even. And the reason why I say that is you just don't have a lot of high age, double-digit age rye whiskey from Kentucky that ends up being below $200. Now, there are some outliers there, you know, from other big distillers, but as far as a Parker's Heritage goes, and as far as a limited release goes, to keep it under $200, I think is kind of a win-win. However, I do think that most people are not going to find this bottle for $185, which is actually a big reason why I didn't, you know, seek out a bottle of it this year. But again, this just increases my, you know, just my want and my desire for a regularly released Heaven Hill barrel proof rye, whether that's under the Pikesville name, whether that's under the Elijah Craig name, it needs to happen. The most I'd pay here if I ran across a bottle would maybe be $200, but I'm not going to go all the way up to $400 or $600 for this bottle. There are just too many good barrel proof ryes out there. Which brings me to alternatives. Now, for alternatives for this one, you have Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof Rye, which is now a shelf, a shelfer. It's a regular release now. You have Michter's US1 Barrel Strength Rye, which is a little bit harder to get. Wild Turkey Rare Breed Rye, which I don't think is as complex as this is. You have Stellum Rye from Barrel Craft Spirits, and even Corbin Cash this year. Corbin Cash is a brand I discovered this year. It's a 7-year. They use a Merce Rye, or Merced Rye, I should say. And those ryes are fantastic. So there are a lot of great options. But if you want to stay in the Heaven Hill family, all you really have is Elijah Craig Rye. And then you have the Pikesville Rye. And Pikesville Rye isn't a bad option either. It's just not going to be as big and bold as this. And is it a recommend? Yeah. I mean, I think for most folks, what you should do is probably just try this at a bar. I'm not saying it's a try before you buy, but I'm saying, you know, if you're like me, you're probably just going to want to find a pour of this somewhere, get a sample of it, because these are really hard to find. But if you're lucky enough to find one at retail, yeah, definitely pick it up if you're a rye fan. I think rye fans will absolutely love this bottle. But yeah, if you're like me and just not really going to come across this unless you get really lucky, you know, try it at a bar at least, because I think it's definitely worth it. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this Sampler Saturday as we, All right, guys, hope you enjoyed the Sampler Saturday as we tried the 2023 Parker's Heritage limited release, the 10-year barrel proof rye. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the subscribe button below. Please hit the like button. Let me know down in the comments if you have found this bottle, if you've tried it, what you think of it. Thanks again to my buddy Mark for sending the sample. And as always, like I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with, like Mark did. So cheers, guys. See you next time right here on The Master Drum. Cheers.